Yo guys, this is Mo here, or X2k is probably known me as, and today I'm going to tell you how I do my FX. So this is Photoshop CS6, I believe. I'm not quite sure exactly. I don't really keep updated on the Photoshop posts, but yeah. So I saw Madden do this, so I thought why not give it a go myself. Anyway, so as you can see, I've cut out Russell Westbrook here. Um, you know, you can zoom in, you can see it's a good quality photo, good lighting, which is important. Um, if you have bad lighting on a photo, it can really mess up your cut. And as far as I'm concerned, there's not really a quick way to fix that. It'll take you a lot of time to get that lighting right, and quality is especially important. Right, so if you're scrolling through Getty and you see a photo you really want to use, but it just has poor quality, then you just can't use it because poor quality, even with sharpening, you're just never going to get it right. Anyway, um, two things I wanted to point out. One or three actually. One, you can see if you zoom in very close, especially around the white here, there's a whole bunch of black kind of excess around. Um, with cards, it doesn't really matter that much that it's there as long as it's not too much, because you will get that. I mean, if you want to take the time out to use the eraser tool and just kind of go around it, then by all means go for it because it'll make it look even better. But with cards, and especially putting them into the Jenny on 2K MTC, it just doesn't matter because, as you know, the Jenny is such poor quality that it doesn't really even show up, especially if you're working on a black background. Number two, I use the pen tool here to cut out my player pics, I guess. As you can see, it kind of just works like that. And I mean, I would recommend the pen tool the most. It's it's the hardest to learn, how to use well. But once you do learn it, it becomes so much easier. Especially like around the basketball here, you can see it's like super round. You get really nice kind of rounded cuts, and it looks really good. You can also use the polygonal lasso tool here as well. Again, that works fine. It just means you won't get the super rounded edges you get with the pen tool. Normal lasso tool I wouldn't recommend, just because I've personally got a pretty shaky hand. I don't think I could do that freehand. Magic wand and quick selection tool do not use because you will get an extremely shaky cut. Along with the eraser tool, do not use the eraser tool to cut out your player piece. Thirdly, with the hair, once you cut, when you're cutting, you want to make sure that, especially, I mean, you only need to do this if the player's not bald. If it's bald, you can kind of just go around it with the pen tool because you get that nice rounded kind of edge. But as you can see with the hair here on Russell Westbrook, I would kind of cut around it a bit. So you're coming up here and then you kind of go around it like that. So you leave a bit of excess around the cut. And what that will do is it'll leave a little bit of room for you to go in with the eraser tool and get kind of nice rounded edges on the hair, which will ultimately look better because then it won't be kind of squarish and kind of ugly. And another thing as well, just before we get into the actual effects, make sure the color on your cut is good. Don't use a cut that's too red, or don't use one that has really weird kind of coloring to it. Try and find one that's really nice and balanced because you can fix it, but again, like lighting, it will take time. Anyway, so we're going to go up into filter, and the first thing we're going to use is camera raw filter. This is essential. You need to know how to use this. And literally, I took some time when I was starting out to literally just go through camera raw filter and every single thing in there, because trust me, there's so many things that are helpful here. Even when you're doing temps and stuff, there's just so many helpful things in here. Okay, so you should open it up and you should see a page like this. I actually had this highlighted before, and what it did was it made all my whites look red. So that was really annoying, and I had to figure that out before I started recording. Anyway, So you're in here and we're in the basic tab. This is your main tab. This is what you use the most. So what I personally do, I always put the texture up to 100. As you can see, the texture just kind of gives a bit more depth, a bit of sharpening, quite nice. And I usually put the clarity up to 100. It'll look a bit weird now, but we'll go back and fix it later with other filters up here. But what putting clarity to 100 does, you don't really want to do that if your cut's too red, because then it'll kind of make it a bit deep fried. And yeah, I suppose it's kind of a very harsh filter. Like if you're not confident with it, maybe don't go to the full 100. But I'm going to show you how making it to the full 100 gives it a lot of kind of depth and shadow into the image, and then you can fix it with these filters here. Anyway, so then I usually go straight up to the blacks, and because as you can see, if we scroll back down to 0, the cut's quite dark, we're going to bring the blacks up a bit and go to shadows and bring them up a little bit as well, probably about that. Okay, so and now you want to mess around with your whites and your highlights. What I usually do, I usually drag the whites up a bit and then drag the highlights down. That doesn't actually look that good on this cut. Let me make the whites a little bit less and then drag the highlights down. And what that does, it kind of gives a little bit of contrast to the image, because I personally don't like using contrast, because I find even a little bit just makes your image too deep fried. Exposure, you only really want to use in certain circumstances. If your cut is too bright or it's too dark, then you can brighten it or you can darken it. Temperature and tint, don't use. Vibrance and saturation you can use. I would recommend going, they both kind of do the same thing, but I would use vibrance because it's a little less harsh than saturation. It warms up a bit more, whereas saturation kind of just like really brightens up everything. And anyway, so now we're going to go into curve, and with the new Photoshop update, you don't actually have to do the curve like this. You can just use it through settings here. Pretty much the same as camera raw. I wouldn't recommend using the lights and darks here. I would use black and white in the basic tab, but sometimes the shadows and highlights can be helpful here, so we'll go to that. Detail, you can do your sharpening through here, or you can use the other sharpen method, which I'll show you later, which I personally like to use. And noise reduction, I wouldn't recommend it. You can do luminosity by color later, and it kind of like it really de-sharpens your image, and when you get into the genuine look as good, it looks super blurry. Not my kind of thing. Just don't. I wouldn't do it. If you're looking to copy someone else's effects, say someone like a Jabba, then he uses noise reduction, but I don't know, personally not for me. And same with color noise reduction, it just doesn't work. Color mixer, important. Skip out the hue layer, because as you can see, if you have your oranges, then it'll make them yellow, and that's not what we're after. Saturation. This is where you can adjust saturation by color. So this could be quite important. The oranges kind of dictate the skin. Same with the yellows, as well as like white jerseys. You can adjust the blues a bit. Also, what you want to do is, if your cut doesn't include blue, or if it doesn't include green, or if it doesn't include both, what you want to do is you want to say this one doesn't include green, bring it right down to -100, because with the texture slider, what it does, it increases kind of the aquas and the greens in the image, and it kind of gives us this weird kind of effect. It doesn't look good if you use a lot of it, which sometimes you have to. But anyway, that looks about good. Luminance, this is where you want to use your luminance, because this doesn't reduce your noise as much, and it gives the image a lot better lighting. So as you can see, I'm just adjusting that, and you can see what it does. So this one is quite helpful. I wouldn't usually do it on the oranges or the yellows. Yellows you can, like a little bit. I wouldn't do it on the oranges. I would just leave the oranges. That looks quite good. Yeah, okay. Um, from split toning downwards, I wouldn't touch. You can go into FX and you can do a little bit of vignetting if you want, but on cuts it doesn't really work. It's more helpful on temps to kind of get a lot of shadow, and it's an easy way to get shadow. Anyway, so that's looking good for camera raw. What we could probably do is, once we go back out, you can see the difference just there. Already it's looking very good. Oh, pen tool activated. You can go back in, and if you think it needs a little bit more, you can go into texture again. Don't touch clarity again. And as you can see, if you kind of zoom in, you can see it kind of gives off these blues and stuff. So we're not going to touch that again. We're just going to leave it like this for now. And we are now going to go. You can do this if you want. It sometimes looks good, sometimes it doesn't. So I'd try it. This is to do the shine on the player. So personally, I like working on a black background. So we're going to go to layer, new fill layer, and then we'll go color fill, and then you can go to black and drag it beneath your player cut. And this means that when you do the shine, you'll actually be able to see it, rather than on a white background, you won't really be able to see it that well. So then you select the cut, and you go select color range. You want to have it on highlights and fuzziness at 20, and then you kind of just want to do a little bit, don't do too much, like literally just about that much, and you can see it'll make a whole bunch of selections on your card, little selections. What you do there is, again, you go to layer, new fill layer, solid color, and this time what you do, you make it white, and as you can see, that adds a little bit of kind of depth and texture to your cut, especially with the highlights. And then what you can do if you want to go a step further is you can go into outer glow and kind of adjust it from here. Personally, what I do is I don't adjust the opacity of the glow in here. I leave it at 100 and then adjust it from here, because it means you kind of get better control of it. And then what I do from here, you don't have to do this, but I'm a fan of merging layers, which I know isn't good, but I do it anyway. So you go layer, merge layers if you want to do that. Anyway, and another thing, when you're doing a glow, make sure you have where the selection is selected, so where all the black with a little white bits on it, not the fill, because if you've got the fill selected, it just won't work. Anyway, now the final thing you want to do, you want to go filter, sharpen, and what this does, it sharpens it automatically for you, so it gives a balanced sharpen throughout the whole cut. Now, if you zoom in really close, then it's not going to look good. But you have to remember that 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to make your cut smaller to fit in your card rather than make it bigger. And so basically, you notice a lot with 2K's cards, they really over sharpen their cuts. So literally what you want to do is you want to go sharpen as much as possible until the cut starts to become discolored. Sorry. And what this will do is this will make, see how it's got discolored here. If I just go back and forth, it stuffs up the shadows, and so that's about as far as we can go. And what that'll do, you can see if you zoom in, it kind of looks ugly, doesn't look nice, looks pretty grainy. But especially if you're putting this in the generator, it'll work wonders for you. It'll make your cut so much clearer in the generator, and it'll just look a million times better. So that's your Westbrook cut. Make sure when you save it, if you want to save it as a PNG, or if you want to put it on your own template, then make sure you have the especially if you want to save it as PNG, make sure you have the white field, the black field turned off, because what that will do otherwise is it'll save it as a PNG with the black field beneath it, and it just won't work. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do it on a player of white skin color. I know it sounds a bit racist, but you do kind of need to differ your FX based on the skin color of the player. It's just how it is. So this Luka cut, this Westbrook cut might be good for a card. The arm kind of hangs out a bit here, but it'll probably work. This Luka cut I wouldn't use for a card, because the arm kind of comes all the way across out here, and it'll be cut off if you try and put it in a temp, so it just won't look good. but I'm just using it because it's got high quality for one of the first images I found on Getty, and why not? Anyway, so again, we go into camera raw filter. You're in your basic, you up your texture and your clarity. You do that for both skin colors, and then you up your blacks and your shadows a little bit, and then again up your whites and decrease your highlights. And especially with the jersey, you can see that kind of adds a really nice gradient between the shadows and the highlights. Don't touch anything else really in the basic. I don't really think this needs much in terms of curve, so that's pretty good. And then color mixer, you always want to touch up a bit, so maybe do a bit of that. Looks good. So FX, if you're small creator and you don't know how to do FX, then what I would say is literally just ask around, because you will catch people who are in a good mood. You can always ask me what you need to do for certain effects, because I'll always help you guys. I'll always, be there for you. Sometimes people aren't in the best of moods and they don't really want to tell you. It's fine. It's just how it is. We all get in bad moods sometimes. That's pretty good. But literally just ask around. Don't be too vague with what you ask though, because if you ask a person, say a big creator, just how do you make a temp or how do you do effects, it's almost like they're giving a tutorial, which isn't really what they want to do. Be very specific. Ask them, for example, how do you do your sharpening, or how do you do your highlights, or whatever. Don't be so vague with what you ask, because that'll really put the creator off from telling you how they do it. Anyway, that looks pretty good for the Luca. I mean, yeah, it's kind of just the same thing as the Westbrook. If you want to do your shine, you can go to fill that solid color and go to your black, drag that beneath, and remember, go select color range. This one probably won't look good because you can see there's a lot of stuff, especially with wide skin players, there's a lot of stuff selected where the white will fill. Even here you can see, so there'll be a lot of white that will be filled in here. I mean, it looks okay. We'll see what it looks like with the shine, but it might just be a bit too much. I usually just drag that across so you can kind of see the whole cut. We'll probably go with something like that, and then see how that goes. Again, you don't want the shine to be too much, so that looks pretty good actually. So we'll do that. I don't really use shine anymore. This is just if you do use shine. You want to make it apparent that you have used it. As you can see, there are little glows around and stuff. But don't make it overly shiny to the point where it just kind of looks like a blinding light in your eyes, because at that point it'll just look ugly. And then again, you want to go in, then hit your sharpen, and literally just sharpen the hell out of it until it loses some of its color, and then go back one, because this will make your cut so much clearer. This will pretty much bypass your complaints about the generator and how it decreases the quality of your cards. If you sharpen your cut to the infinity degree until it starts getting discolored, your cut will look better in the Geni, I assure you. Anyway, I think that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see some of you guys using this in some of these methods I've taught you. And this is literally how I do effects, so feel free to replicate it. Go for it to your heart's content. I want to see you guys create stuff. Go create, just surprise me.